There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit, so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the Wild Mustang. Welcome back to the Touch of a Mustang podcast. If you are still here with me listening to these podcast episodes, I am so grateful. If you've been here for a while, you probably know that the episodes have been a little more sporadic in the summer. I honestly had the best of intentions starting off the summer, and I knew things were going to be a little bit crazier, so I thought I would do several episodes about some things that have been great lessons for me through some of the difficult journeys and the challenging times, and some of the ways that those have helped me, and the things that I've learned, in hopes that I could, of course, share with other people who might be going through similar experiences or just want some different insights into life that I received from those experiences. I think the busyness of life is always there. And it's a reminder to me that if there's something that you want to do, you really have to make a concerted effort to do it, because life will fill up otherwise. And that's certainly what has happened to me several weeks. But I had a little bit of time that I could carve out, and this is about my third or fourth take because different things happened. I forgot to hook things up. Kiddos came in needing something from mom, and so here we are. And hopefully this one is going to be a go, and you'll be watching it or listening to it. So as I looked at the summer, I had all these ideas in my head of what I could maybe talk about, some principles, concepts, ideas, lessons that I've learned in my time working with horses and through some of the personal struggles and challenges that I recently faced. And this was a topic that kept coming up, and it's not one that was initially on my radar, but I kept having little insights, little anecdotes, experiences that kind of leaned toward this principle repeatedly. And so it's been on my mind. This was the next thing that I wanted to talk about in this little summer series about just having hope in life, healing some of the hard things in our life, and continuing to create a life that you love and that you can feel good about and enjoy. As I kind of thought about this topic and what it could narrow down to, the thing that kind of kept coming back, and I don't know that this is a perfect description, but I do think it's a good base point, is the idea of balance. Now, there are a lot of different opinions out there about balance, and I would say that a lot of the voices out there don't really promote balance in your life. If you're following self-help people, they often tell you you just have to be all in to make improvements, to be successful. Same with the business world. You got to eat, sleep, breathe your new business if you want it to be successful. And even, I would say, with mental health, it's tipped a little too far to, you need to lean into your emotions, feel them, and accept them and honor them. And I think some of the balance has been lost the other way. And certainly there are ideologies coming from all of the other ways. You don't need to work hard. You need to rest. You need to stay where you're comfortable. You need to be kind to yourself. The thing is, both sides hold truth. And that's really what I want to talk about, is finding those middle paths that embrace all elements of truth. I can speak for myself. I don't think I'm alone in this. I've recognized very much that most things I've experienced are not actually that unique, but I've always really wanted black and white, a very specific, easy path that I don't have to decide. Someone can just tell me where to go. That's easier in a lot of ways. And I think that's why we tend to go so hard one way or another. And let me tell you, I'm no exception. There are so many areas of my life where I've drawn really hard, fast lines, not in the sand, but in cement. And then life kind of came along and was like, are you sure about that? And it's interesting because I think when we have those experiences in life that kind of make us question what we were doing, that if we're talking about a pendulum, we start swinging too far the other way. So we're kind of swinging really far one way, and then we think, wait, this maybe doesn't fit into the way I've been thinking, and then it swings really hard the other way. And really, what a pendulum should do is find that in between place of consistency. And, it goes back and forth a little bit. Now, I think that's probably a bit of a controversial idea. People might take that and say you're not committed or you're wishy-washy. And I think we need to question if that's true. Because what I have found is that there is a lot of truth in a lot of different areas, and how that needs to be used in our life is going to look different at different times. So I can think of so many examples of this. I'm going to start with some of my own, and then I'm going to have that reflect out a little bit to some that I've seen in other people. So one for me, which I've kind of talked about, is when I grew up with horses. And I kind of say this loosely because really compared to what I've heard in some horsemanship, I was actually trained closer to a middle ground. But there was certainly this element in my participation with horses that alluded to the idea that you have to stay in control of your horse, that was an essential component. And so when I got my Mustang, that was certainly an ideology that I had in my head, that I needed to be able to show her that I was in control. She needed to listen to me, no exceptions. That was good horsemanship. And of course, I've talked about how that was a big lesson for me. That came from horses, reflected over into my personal life. That was really, you have to let go of control in the areas that aren't yours to control, which are most areas besides our mental, emotional, and often physical state. So I swung really far the other way. And when you get into those ideologies, there's a lot more mystical elements of just this great connection. Things will kind of fall into place because you want it enough. And so for me, like that pendulum, I went from this extreme need for control. And interestingly, this reflected very closely with my personal life as these changes were happening. But I went from this area of intense control over to this other side where letting go of control, which I have to say was so helpful. I needed that at that time in my life. And maybe sometimes we do need that pendulum to swing and to go the other way for a little while. And so for me, it swung the other way into this focus more on mystical, and I will even say connection. Now, the way I stated that sounds kind of bad, like, oh, I went too far the other way over to connection. And I don't actually think that's true at all. I think that both sides, and I would say on the control side, there's a much higher focus on teaching and learning skills, where for me, on this other connection side, it was much more about supernatural things. soul connections, things like that. And so I kind of swung really far the other way. And looking back, I feel like I perhaps didn't focus as much on developing skills. And I don't even know if I'm saying that exactly right. So if I kind of go back on that, I'm kind of unraveling this as I talk about it. But the reality was that control both is important to let go and to maintain. And that sounds counterintuitive, but yeah, we need to let go of control in the areas that we're not responsible for. But at the same time, you need to maintain and refine control in the areas of your responsibility. Meaning it's not all or nothing. It's not, okay, I am just going to stop, and wherever fate takes me, I am going to go and I'm going to be happy about it. Even though there were definitely points that my pendulum was that way. And swinging to the other side where it's all connection. And I don't think that's a full description of the other side, but hopefully it gives you an idea. But all connection, more mystical, divine. And the reality, again, is that, yeah, connection is incredibly important, whether we are talking about horses or talking about relationships. But those connections also require skills and commitment. And some of those things that we might put over on the other side of the pendulum. And so for me, when I started with horses, I feel like my pendulum was really far the other way. And just talking about balance in life, I was very focused on my children, which is a great thing as a mother. Like, you should be focused on your children. But I wasn't giving the other part of it, which is you also need to focus on yourself. You need to have some alone time. You need to have some things in your life that are just for you. You need to remember who you were before you had children. That I all pretty much, there were a few places I held on to it, but for a large part, I let go of that. And again, I don't think I'm unique. I was just talking to a friend about this and kind of the importance of having some things that we enjoy in our life, and how we both have kids that are getting older. And so not requiring quite the same level of attention as when they're younger, and how you kind of come out of that and you don't know who you are anymore. Your identity is motherhood. Now, I think that there are times that we do need to focus more than other times. When you're going to school and working towards a degree, school and education are going to take a greater amount of your attention. There is not going to be a perfect balance. And I don't know that there will ever be a perfect balance. It may be that it's more something that we should keep in mind and work towards, rather than something that's going to be consistently achieved. When you have young children, your life is going to be out of balance. Your pendulum is going to swing very far to the side of caregiving, taking care of others, looking past your own needs, whether that's sleep or food or recreation, and being focused on your kids. And at some points in life, that is good and right. When you have young children, they need that from you. When you have 20-year-olds, they should not require that same level of attention. That's their opportunity to learn and grow and, be hitting the books hard, gaining skills in a career. So I don't think, even though I think balance is very important, I don't think that there is a time where our life will ever necessarily be perfectly balanced. Maybe it's a bit like walking a tightrope. You step one way and you kind of
wiggle a little bit and you have to rebalance yourself and you have to find what works for you in that position. So I feel like I'm jumping a little bit all over the place, but hopefully by the end, it's kind of the message that I want to portray. Going back to my experience in my personal life and with horses, on the one side was this almost desperate need to control things for the outcome to be exactly what I wanted it to be. And it was in a way devastating when it wasn't. I've talked about with my Mustang, I reached a point where the picture of me and my Mustang was not coming out the way I thought that it should. And, I thought maybe she should go somewhere else. She should be with someone who knows these things better, who can do better for her. Because, clearly it's not looking the way I thought it should be. It must be wrong. That's false, by the way, because even those things we really love and want and desire in life most often are not going to turn out and look the way that we thought they would. That's okay. Life's not meant to be exactly how we envision it. I think it can be both better and worse, and we learn both ways from those. So I started at this place of just desperate control, and I don't want to totally focus on that because I want to do another episode on just control, because that was a huge thing for me. But really more a practice in implementing ideologies and thinking that there is only one perfect way. And that's really what I want to talk about, is this idea that there is one perfect way to do it. And if we think we're doing awesome at life, we are doing that the one perfect way. And if life's hard, maybe it's because we got off that path that we're supposed to be on. We screwed up. We did something wrong. And what I've come to learn and to believe is that there are lots of different paths that will get you to a really great destination. The same destination, I would say even. And I liken it to climbing a mountain. We have lots of mountains around here. So we hike a lot. And there are a lot of different trails. And not trails, just unbroken paths that can be used to get to the same point. It is different depending on the path we choose. If we choose a really developed trail, it can be easier. If we choose a trail that hasn't been developed, it can be a lot harder. You can find yourself bushwhacking, which we've definitely done many times. It's hard. It is way harder than walking on a trail when you are trudging through branches after branch in your face. It is a different experience, but you can still get to the same destination. Your experience is different. You exert more energy going one way. If you're trying to exercise, that's a good thing. If you're just wanting to get there, that makes it a lot harder. Depending on the path you choose, the view is different. The things you see along the way are different. The experiences you have are different. We tend to look at things and people that are different than us and judge that as being not as good. And that's certainly something that I did. Man, if I saw my life now, which I love so much of, and I'm so grateful for, if I had seen that 10 years ago, I probably would have grieved it because the path didn't look like the one that I wanted to climb. I wanted to climb this perfectly tailored path. And instead, my path up included stuff I didn't want to go through. Bushwhacking, wildfires, falling down, having to start over again, not being sure if I was on the right path, instead of this perfectly tailored path that I had in my mind's eye. This is true in the horse world as well, that there are a lot of different paths to a really great destination. I think we can let it confuse us. Like it has to be one or the other. We want things black or white. We don't want gray, or we don't want different shades of white and different shades of black. And it can really get us up in our heads if we think there's only one way, like I have to pick the right path. If I don't pick the right path, it's going to be a disaster. I feel like I've seen this principle a lot in horsemanship. One thing I've seen is a lot of people will get on a forum or come to me and say, I've done this thing. My horse reacted this way and it's terrible. I feel like I failed him. I didn't do it right. That whole time we're saying I picked the wrong path, not like, oh, there's some trees in the way that we need to learn to navigate. And wow, as I navigated it, I learned so much, which I think is how we should look at it. Also, I have seen it in different groups and ideologies. And I think it's true of every group. But one ideology that's really big today is R+. So positive reinforcement. This is another concept that I could create a whole podcast on. It's very interesting to see it applied in horsemanship because it's something you learn a lot about in psychology, which is where my background is. And this idea is that you get your horse to do what you want by giving them something good in return. And I think we could jump into learning theory, which is another thing that I'd love to explore sometime. But what I want to focus on is, I use positive reinforcement. I haven't been shy about that. We use treats with my horses, and it's a tool that actually helped us to make some big breakthroughs. So I'm definitely an advocate of it, but I've seen a lot of talk about that's all I want to use is positive reinforcement. If you're using other methods like pressure and release, where you're incorporating a negative stimuli until you get the desired outcome, then a lot of people are very anti using that. And I use both. There are times where, my horse is diving in the grass and I'm bopping on their lead or the reins that, come on, we're going to move forward and it's going to continue to be uncomfortable until you come with me. I don't know that, again, it's an area I'm special in. I think that most of us probably do draw from a lot of different ideologies as we live our life and work in horsemanship, but we can get so focused on this is the one path that I have to use. And one thing that I've seen happens a lot, and I really think it's an inner reflection, is a lot of shame. And the inner reflection is just the unsurety we feel that we want to do something this way. And it seems good, but we're not always sure. The outcomes aren't always what we think it should be. And then the outward reflection is we either feel very virtuous because we are only using the one right path. We are doing things the one right way while other people aren't. That judgment is not only rampant, but it helps us feel better. It helps us feel better about the unsurety of life. It makes us more comfortable that we can say, I know better than them. I am doing it better than them. That works great. Until something comes into your life and says, you don't know what on earth you're talking about. Because actually, this way is a good path too. And this way works as well. Now, when we talk about these different paths, let me also say there are definitely paths that are just not good. They are 100% on the other side. Abusing horses or children or spouses to get compliance. No, that will never be right. That will never be a good philosophy, ideology to use. There are some things that are just blatantly wrong. And that actually is another topic I want to talk about the importance of values in our life. So be looking for that if I get my act together and can get these going and moving out a little bit faster. So there are some paths. You will not get to the top of the mountain if you go and take a raft down the river. You're not going to get to the top of the mountain if you tumble off a cliff. There are some directions that absolutely will not get you to the destination that you are trying to go. I don't want to say that every path holds truth. There are some practices in horsemanship that I absolutely will never use. I will never sack out a horse, I think it's called. I don't even know because I haven't done that, but where horses are with no power of their own, just exposed to these things and relentlessly until they stop. Again, a whole different conversation about what that's teaching the horse and the lessons we can draw from that. But there are absolutely some practices that they are always a no. My problem, and the problem I had also in my life, is that I was picking one very specific thing and adhering to that so closely that I couldn't see like, hey, there's all these other paths, and actually these paths might be better. And actually, if you go on this path, you're going to head the wrong direction for this moment in time with the variables and specifics that surround you. And being so stuck to that it's like, no, this is what I said. This is what I believe. I have to stick to this, even though the results are not what they should be, even though life isn't looking like what it should be, because I'm so stuck to the way this has to be. Let me give you a personal example. In my marriage, there have been some pretty significant challenges that have been really hard for me. And in my mind, marriage should always look a certain way. You should do certain things together. You should manage money a specific way. You should only talk about specific things. You should never talk about divorce. Different things that I thought, this is the way it has to be. If this isn't the way that it is, then that's not a good thing. And I will say that a lot of those have proven false. For example, kind of a safe one because it's pretty open topic. Divorce. Like my husband and I specifically remember someone saying before we got married, like, don't ever talk about divorce. And I stuck with that for a long time. And, we got to a point where I thought it's something we need to consider. Is that the best choice? And I think that can be a good thing for both partners in a marriage to ask, like, is this still a good thing? Am I still committed to this? And traditional wisdom that I received was, you don't even ask that. Got to a point where I did ask it. Is that a better outcome? Is that a better option? And for me, it was good because it helped me realize, no, that's not the way that I want to go in my life. For me, marriage is worth it. We're going to stick with it, see what happens. So it was beneficial to cross the line into that territory, onto that path that before had been don't you dare go this way. You will fall down the mountain if you go this way. And I went this way and I found out, oh, you know what? Yeah, this can lead to the same destination that I was trying to reach. So swinging back to horsemanship, there, especially I think the popular one today, and that's why it keeps coming up, is the positive reinforcement one. And like I said, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge advocate of positive reinforcement, but I am also study education and the way we learn. And I'd be hard pressed to find a experience in which we only ever learn through positive reinforcement. And I think the same is going to be true for our horses. I don't believe, and I will say in my experience with horses, there has not been 100% positive reinforcement. It is always the only way you should ever use. And I would challenge you, if you're a huge advocate, to really step back and assess, is that the best message, that this is the one and only way to do it? Or is it more accurate to pull and draw truths and teachings from different ideologies? Really, this is just every avenue. People who ride bitless say that it's the only way to ride, that it's cruel if you ride other ways. I ride bitless, and I also have a horse. I don't ride him with a bit, but my kids do because they feel more comfortable with that, and he does well with it. With my mare, you could put a bit in, and it's actually going to be, I tried it, and it was more difficult to work together to guide her. In other words, she just did what she wanted. The bit was nothing. But in a bitless bridle, we can communicate. We can get where we want to go. We can find a mutual ground and work together. Spurs are another one. I don't personally use spurs, but I have seen people who use them, and they're not making their horse's side bleed. They're not hurting them. And it's a very soft, gentle cue. I don't really know that much about it, so I won't say more about it, but I do think any tool can be the right path, and any tool, ideology, can turn into the wrong path and end up being something that is actually worse for us. And again, I'm picking on positive reinforcement just because I've seen so much of it with little pushback. And I think with like pressure and release, there's a lot of that also, but there's been a lot more pushback. And from my perspective, there's a place for both of those. And both of them can be good methods to use. And for me, I use different ones with different horses at different times in different situations, depending on what works best at that time. That is a combination of where I'm at mentally. It's a combination of the skills I have. It's a combination of the personality of the horse that I'm working with. It has to include the environment that we're in. If we're in a high-pressured environment, I'm probably using positive reinforcement to try and bring down the fight or flight response to make positive correlations in that situation. If we're alone on the mountain and my horse just wants to graze, I'm going to use some pressure and release to say, come on, let's go. You can do that later. Right now, we're going to do this. I don't think that that is cruel. I think it can be more damaging to embrace one ideology so intensely that we aren't willing to see other ones. And we find ourselves so defensive that what we're doing is right, that we leave no room for improvement because we are so scared that if we don't fight to show the methods, whether it's horsemanship, the way we're raising our kids, the way we're working and living, if we don't stick to that so tightly and someone else comes and says, see, I told you you were wrong, that is such a threat to ourselves. The reality is it can be right sometimes, it can be wrong sometimes, and sometimes what was good for a period and a time changes, and now something else is new and good. Here's another example I'll give with my mare, Sylvanie. She is strong and she has a mind of her own. And for me, positive reinforcement changed everything. I can still remember the moment it changed. I had been really struggling with her going out of the corral without just flipping out. And at the time we lived in this neighborhood where it was 1 acre lots, but it was very rural and there were a lot of dogs. And so these dogs would have these huge yards to go in, which is awesome for them. And they would just rush down to the fence line, barking like they were insane. And here I could barely get Sylvanie out of the corral. And now these rabid sounding dogs come barking at us. And as you can imagine, she was at a point where she couldn't handle it all and she would just blow up. And then I posted in a forum looking for suggestions and had some great suggestions offered. And one was, have you tried treats? I hadn't. I had the old mentality that like, if you give your horse treats, they're going to bite your hand off. They're going to get pushy. They're going to behave terribly. And so it's something that I had seen as wrong, but what I was doing wasn't working. And so I altered that and I said, you know what? Hey, I'm going to give it a try. Not making any progress the way we're doing it. And I think sometimes we have to get to that point where it's just like, this isn't working. We're going to have to try something new to find that new thing that works for you. And so that's where I was when I started using treats. And so I went out on the trail with treats. And when I say treats, it's nothing special. It was just alfalfa cubes. And that changed our whole world. It changed so much of what we were able to do together. And even those don't always work. If your horse is way over threshold, a treat's not going to phase them. But if they're just a little bit over threshold, and I wouldn't even say over threshold, but just on the verge of being very nervous and excited, that can get their attention and kind of draw them back into their mind where they can kind of think and recognize, that makes me nervous, but look at that, I'm safe. Okay, I'm going to eat. And there's a lot of cool stuff I would like to talk about positive reinforcement and how it trains our minds and the minds of our horses and how it influences automatic responses. But again, I think that's a discussion that I'll have to save for another time, so this podcast doesn't go on for years. But so I started using positive reinforcement. We started going on walks with treats and going past these dogs who were just flying out. And she'd see the dog, I'd click, she'd look at me, give her a treat. And soon she could draw her attention away from the dogs and to me. And I remember this very specific time where we were walking down this trail where, I mean, it's just one house after another. The dogs rush out on one side, you get past it. They rush out on the other side, you get past that one. There's 2 more dogs beyond that. So it was funny. At the time, people would say, I would love that. I would love that kind of training grounds. And now I am grateful for it. But at the time, I was like, this is insane. I do not want to live in a neighborhood where there are dogs rapidly rushing at us every step we take. It was very overwhelming for me until treats. So there was this one time we were walking and I kind of knew the houses that had dogs. And so I'd kind of check them out, see like, are dogs coming? Do we need to anticipate that a little bit? And we walked by this one. I didn't really see dogs. And then they came out afterwards and I jumped out of my skin. I was on the opposite side of Sylvanie. So I couldn't see them. I just heard them all of a sudden. Huge jump. She didn't do anything. She was not concerned at all. And that was because I had been able to change that mentality that, hey, maybe there's another ideology out there that will work. And I think that's true for so many areas of horsemanship. If you are using pressure and release and it's not working, maybe try something different. Look and see what someone else is doing besides who you follow very closely. If you're using positive reinforcement and you're not getting the results that you've been working on and trying for, maybe try pressure and release, or maybe try working on connection. There may be another answer out there that is leading to the same destination, you having this great relationship with your horse that you can ride together and work together, and you just need to go about it a different way. And this same principle came back into life. So again, we can go back to our culture, and there's some very specific methods that are promoted for mental health and wellness. Therapy is a big keyword. If you're having struggles, go talk to a counselor. The next one, and actually I would even say before therapy, is medication. You're struggling, you're having challenges, check in with your doctor, get on some meds. For us, in our situation, those were both things that we tried. And, if you look at the data and the research on medications that are used for mental health, it won't blow you over. And it's actually pretty scary. And I was actually really scared for it to be something that we used at all, is with a lot of hesitancy, because there are different links. I think if it's something you're facing, research it a little bit on your own, talk to people around you. Actually, I would say research it a lot on your own from good, reliable sources. But we did for a while go down the medication path, and it didn't help. It made things worse. The side effects were worse than what worked, even though in our culture, that is one of the first lines of defense in our mental well-being. And then the second one, therapy and counseling, both on a personal basis and as a couple, are things that we tried and maybe helped a little bit sometimes. And it also made things worse sometimes for us. And so for us, we tried the 2 most commonly walked paths, the 2 that are promoted the most. And for us, it didn't provide the results that we needed to move forward into a healthy, happy life. Some of the things that are not talked about as much ended up being what were good solutions for us. Working on our health, paying attention to what we eat, what we do with our bodies, focusing more on our bodies. I had 6 kids, so exercise was not something, exercise consisted of lifting kids out of the crib, other things like that. Pursuing hobbies and interests and passions was another thing that was essential for us. Talked about a lot, but the horses were really a place where I gained the skills and the learning that I needed. And I'm still exploring how exactly that happened and how they do that for other people, but I know that they do. That's the same avenue that counseling provides, is to help you develop skills. I do think sometimes you will absolutely need to go to people who know more than you, who are doing things better than you. Look to those people who have mastered where you're struggling. They've mastered the things that you're trying to do. Ask them, what worked for you? That's one of the best places we can learn, I think, is with really good mentorship and seeking out the knowledge. What alternatives are there? We're trying these traditional things, or we're trying these things that we were told from a child should work, and it's not working. What other things are out there? And, as we do that, that pendulum may swing really far the other way. For me personally, health and exercise are important, but that's not enough alone. Journaling is a big thing for me. For my husband, I can't tell you the last time that he journaled, but he's found other paths and avenues, and some of them really off the beaten path, that have worked for him and helped him to move to a better place, to learn things that were needed. And it's interesting because just like I really have found that horses need different things. Like I was talking about my first Mustang, Sylvanie, how treats were a game changer for her. I've been working with my youngest Mustang, Freedom, who really hasn't had a lot done with her. Another story for another time. She does great with a halter, with some pressure and release, and, rubs on the face, some positive reinforcement. And she's done really great with that. And so same thing in our personal lives. The things that I found and the things that, just for example, my husband found were vastly different. And it's even funny because I used to tell him, you should do X, Y, and Z. And he would say, this doesn't work for me. And I'd be like, well, that's like what they say should work. So that's probably your problem. But in greater wisdom, he said, this isn't working for me. I'm going to look for different paths. And I've been also able to do that. They say good life should look like X, Y, Z. But actually, that life doesn't feel very good to me. So I'm going to explore GHI. That's hard to start in the middle alphabet. Remember how it goes. I'm going to explore a different avenue. No, there's no book that says, hey, this is how you do it, but this feels good to me. And I do this and I can see different results. And the same thing with horsemanship. We look at all these trainers and I think they can offer us a wealth of information. The trainers that I really admire and look up to, they are in this process of continual evolution in their ideas and theories and practices, where some I have even seen admit, I always did this. I thought this was the right way. And then this horse helped me realize that actually this is also effective, or this was effective for this personal horse. And I can even think of some specific things that I could say that would work really good for one horse and it would not work as great for the other horse. And that's because we're all individuals. We're all different. That same principle is true for us on our life paths, that someone may be going up a path and it is working really well for them. Someone is really dedicated to business and they are thriving and they are happy. And someone else is dedicated to business and they're absolutely miserable. And instead they need to sell their business and move to a cabin in the middle of nowhere, or buy a van and live out of a van, even though that's not what traditional wisdom says we should do. And so this is the piece for health and wellness and hope that I really want to share. And, I'm not even sure if balance describes it well. Maybe it's better said that you need to find the path that works for and is meant for you. And that path is going to look different from your neighbor. We look at our neighbors a lot, and we either judge our path to be good by what they're doing, and possibly judge their path to be bad and wrong. Could it be that the paths are different and you are on the right path for you, and you need to navigate that and find what works for you? And maybe that is medication and counseling in some form. And maybe that is healing your physical body and then working on your mental health. Maybe that is, bucking the tradition of buying, and really simplifying your life. And maybe what someone else is really passionate about is staying busy and helping other people. And for one person, that creates a mental health crisis where they need time to themselves, downtime, rest, creative time. Our lives should not look like anyone else's. Really, your life is unique and different, and we create a lot of turmoil by thinking that we need to exactly copy another life or specific principles that our church leader used, our parents used, our mentor used. When, yes, take and draw the good from that. Take and draw the things that are working well for you. Don't throw it all out, but the things that don't work for you and the things that are even damaging, that are just always a no, get rid of those things. Let go of those things. You can take, whether it's your parents or a teacher in horsemanship, you can take the things that are good and work well for you, and you can set aside the things that don't work well for you or don't resonate for you during that time. That's certainly something that I've done in my life where I thought, yeah, this is working really good. And it might have even worked good for that time. And then another time came and I was like, no, now I need to let this go. Even going along with that, the paths change through life. We might be on a path that is working perfectly for us. Something happens, and now we need to find a new path in a different way. And there was this idea that I saw online that, there's this period of time where you really just need to work hard. And kind of the idea after that was, after that, it's more important to, instead of gaining skills, to have more rest and restoration in your life. And again, I think the path is going to be different for everybody. I think there are some true values and principles, and I think that there are true values and principles that we need to use at different times in our lives, and true values and principles that we need to use that other people don't need to use, and that other people need to use, but we don't need to use. Maybe you are absolutely content doing liberty with your horse, and that's what works for you, and that's what works for your horse, and that's beautiful. We don't have to take away from that when we compare to someone else. We can just embrace that and love that, and we can love that our neighbor is working really hard in a competitive event, in an endurance event or barrel racing or Western pleasure, whatever it is. And our life doesn't have to look like theirs. Our life doesn't even have to look like the life that we imagined. And let's be honest, it is probably not going to look like the life we imagined. We had visions in our head about what it was going to be like, and it wasn't all correct. It was just something we imagined, something we dreamed up. I had a vision in my head that I would get my Mustang, and 30, 60, 90 days, I'd have this great horse, and we'd have this terrific bond, and then I would get another one that worked great for my kids, and that's not how it turned out. It was a much longer process, but that process that did unfold was a lot more interesting than the one I envisioned. The life that has unfolded was full of so many more lessons that my younger self would have said, yeah, I know the answer to that. And then I was tested more and like, no, you don't. You need to go back and study. You need to go back and learn. You need to go back and try some other things. And instead of being devastated like that, and trust me, I definitely was at times devastated by that. If we can go back and learn, if we can explore different paths, if we can try different ways, if we can take the judgment and the shame away from ourselves and away from our neighbors and let their path be theirs and let our path be ours, and take and harness the truths that work for us and set aside the ones that don't, and let other people embrace the ones we've set aside, even if that works well for them. And, everybody's safe, no one's in danger, then it will change the way that we show up in this world. When we can say to someone else, that's awesome that you are doing it that way. This is the way that has really worked for me, and I'm loving this. That's possible. It's possible for things to be different and for both things to be good. We can take two different trails to forming these incredible bonds and relationships and experiences with our horses. Those can look absolutely different. That can look like a 30-day Mustang for one person, and that can look like an 8-year Mustang for me. This is something that gives you freedom, and freedom is awesome. It's something we fight for. The opportunity to choose differently and to even question our long-held beliefs and ideologies gives an awesome freedom. And you know what? You might find one that you question, does this really work? And you question it and you try some other things and you come back to it and say, yeah, this really does work for me. And other times you might say, you know what? I found something that worked better. This worked for me for this time, and now there's something that's better. Life's about changes. We can't keep it the same. And as we can, work on that balance of, I almost feel like that's probably misguided. It's not really balanced, but work on finding the path that is meant for us with the tools we have and we can pull into our lives. It provides so much peace. And I think ultimately, when we talk about healing, when we talk about hope, we want that peace to know that, we're doing okay. And I promise you, if you are trying your best, if you are continuing to learn, if you are engaging in this life in a way that is open and non-judgmental, or even if you're working on making it open and non-judgmental, then you will find good things in this life. My guess is if you think you're doing really bad, you're probably doing better than you think you are. And if you think you're doing really awesome and know all the answers, you might find out that you didn't know it all. That was me. And it's hard, but it's also a really incredible path to learn and grow and gain wisdom and experiences that just don't come any other way. So embrace that opportunity to forge your path to the destination that you're trying to go to a destination of great horsemanship, great relationship with your horses, incredible skills with your horses, and that destination of living a life that you are happy about, that you love, that is hard, but still good. And that is something that will bring tremendous peace and healing. And it is hard. So stick with it, keep at it. And if you feel like this message is something that would benefit someone else, please share it. Subscribe if you want more content like this. And most of all, thank you for being here and for talking with me. Now, if you're on Spotify, they just added a new feature where we can kind of have a conversation. I will tell you, it's pretty weird sitting in my office talking to myself for an hour. I would love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, what resonated with you, what didn't resonate with you, you didn't really understand, anything, all of it. I would love to hear what you thought. Thanks for being here. Keep an eye out for the next episode. Maybe I can get them out faster. We'll have to see. Life is busy, but that's also an incredible thing about life, to have it filled with so many good things and to really pick and choose where your time and energy is going to be. Have a fantastic day. Go spend some time with your horses. Learn new things. And I'd love to have you back here with me.
Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you.